Hello and welcome to Building Podcast. This afternoon, we're looking at the cyber risk within our industry and the ways that both individuals and businesses can mitigate them. I think we're all now aware of the damage that a breach of our IT systems might have, with the majority of business failing to recover from a significant breach. Yet many construction companies continue without putting in even the most basic of controls or managing the risks created by the suppliers or their stakeholders. I'm very pleased to welcome George Wood, who's Director of Toragaurd, a specialist cybersecurity consultant, to the Building Podcast this afternoon. Now, George spends most of his waking hours worrying about these issues so that his customers can at least sleep. So he's therefore the ideal person to tell us about the risks and some of the solutions. George, welcome to the Building Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. I'm looking forward to today because for me, this is one of the existential risks that both businesses in our industry face. But before we kick off, can you just tell our listeners sort of a little bit about yourself and particularly the sort of services that Toragaurd offer? Because a cyber security consultant might mean all things to all people or nothing at all.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So my name's George. I've got just around 15 years experience in the IT and cybersecurity industry. I guess my journey, it started as a break fix support engineer on the service desk, because all the fun times that we had on that. And then I eventually moved into compliance and cloud security, and that all kind of happened because there was a need within the business, and I stuck my hand up, and then it all developed from there. And years later, it's turned into a cybersecurity company that specialise in compliance and cloud security and penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, and then one of the most important ones is obviously incident response. So with Toragaurd, it's very much instead of here's a list of products that we do, and I'm always cautious of doing that, it's more of a let's go on a kind of a journey and look at what actually are the issues. And I guess that's what we're going to look at today. But what are the issues that you're facing, the pain points that you've got, and the vulnerabilities that you have within your tenant and your environment, and then we can kind of pinpoint in the right services and products thereafter, instead of kind of just throwing everything at you, which I realised wouldn't get us anywhere. So yeah, that's a bit about me and a bit about Toragaurd.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to explore some of these risks now, George, as we go through the talk. But should we start off by just sort of generally saying why protection against IT threats is such an important issue for businesses today?
Yeah, and I guess there's a few reasons, and some business owners might find more important than others. So you've got the financial element of the cost of either a fraudulent invoice being sent to say the attackers that have intercepted regular invoices that get sent out. It's the operational damage. It's not being able to say fulfill projects or delays within projects. But I think probably the biggest one, which in essence kind of covers all of them, is the reputational harm that it could cause your business. Some people can probably stomach the money and maybe one or two projects being delayed, but if it damages the reputation with one of your larger clients or suppliers, then that could be the end of it, really. So I'd say that they're probably the main reasons of why it's so important to take it so seriously. And I think there are quite a lot of companies still that it's kind of, it won't happen to us. It'll only happen to the larger organisations, and I guess that's what we're here today to demyth that, because it does happen to the smallest of companies.
So why is that? I mean, presumably if you're a fraudster, you're going to try and pick the biggest where the biggest win for your buck is.
Of course.
A smaller company is less likely to put the protection in place so they're easier pickings? How does it work?
Yeah, so I guess all businesses are targets. I mean, if you store client or financial data, you are a target. And a lot of the smaller companies will say, well, they won't bother with us because we only turn over X amount, when you've got big enterprises out there turning over millions and billions. But small businesses are an easier target, and some of the attackers are quite lazy, in a way that if they see an opportunity to kind of multiply it with smaller businesses that take a lot less time and they don't have the same security posture as, say, enterprise companies, then it is a much easier target for them to look at, I'd say.
Mm. And the fraudsters no geographic boundaries. So I mean, we've got it's coming from everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
and I suppose the other challenge we have is that over the last, certainly in my lifetime, we've let computers into virtually every aspect of our professional existence. They
Yeah,
run our
exactly.
businesses, they run our projects, they run
Yeah,
our HR, they run everything, and
yeah.
that's where that private personal data and important data is stored that somebody can use to their advantage.
Yeah, and I think the construction and energy industries and the companies around that, I think there's added risks to them, more so in terms of different ways. There's a lot of contractors. I used to work for a building construction company, and then obviously moving into Toragaurd, we do a lot of work with building construction companies, and there's a lot of contractors. There's a lot of remote working, remote teams. There is a mixture of, say, contractors turning up with personal devices instead of work devices. Are you confident and comfortable that the data on their devices is being monitored and looked after correctly? Are you happy that if you have a bad lever and they are a contractor or a subcontractor, that you're able to take that data, your company data, back off of that device properly? And I think they're the kind of throwing in the industry, I guess, instead of small and large. It's with the construction and energy industries, it's more around the kind of pain points, and that comes back to what I was saying before: is when Toragaurd come into your business, it's not just here's a long list of here's a shopping list of everything that you can purchase.
Yeah, yeah.
It's instead of, right, well, this is the industry that you work in, these are the pain points: contractors, remote working, personal devices, and then we can tailor it around that.
I mean, is it worth just perhaps running through some of those key risk areas that you see, particularly in the construction industry? Just talking around about some of these, because we are undoubtedly, we have very large lumpy bits of money going through our accounts if we're contractors.
Hmm.
Um, if we're consultants, we have some very large payrolls going through, or
Yep.
can do relatively large payrolls going through. And the other challenge we have within our industry is some very long supply chains, all of which are part of the same ecosystem, financial ecosystem,
Yep.
which goes there. I mean, are there all those areas of risk that we should be monitoring and being careful of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on something that I think is extremely important. It's the supply chain, and your suppliers and your vendors are extremely important to your security. Because if you are, say, subcontracting someone in, or you have a supplier that you need on site for a certain job or project, how sure are you that they're following? If you're letting them into, say, your tenant, you're giving them project data or financial data because it requires them to know about the job or the project as well. How sure are you that they're following the same security measures and frameworks that you are? You could be following everything. You could be doing the compliance frameworks. You could have all of the security posture within Microsoft. You could be doing penetration testing, vulnerability scanning. You could be training your users. That's all great. However, if you let in, say, a vendor or a supplier into your environment that doesn't follow the same standards, then that's a hole that can be exploited.
Yeah. So, and at that point, all bets are off, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
And we might come back to some of those case studies or stories, as you call them, as of disasters that you've come across in your professional career.
It's
Do
been
you
a
want to
few, yeah.
just talk around about some of the levels of protection? So rather than talk around about what the techies or the IT professionals are going to do, if
Hmm.
I'm running a business or managing a business, well, so what would be the various levels of cyber protections I ought to be entertaining or looking at?
Yeah, and I think that's super important for this to be debunked as well, because I believe there's a general consensus within business owners that it will cost money, and potentially isn't within budget and it's not of complete importance to, say, the business owner. However, there are multiple things that you can do that either are free or extremely I don't want to use the word
Not
cheap,
very
but
expensive.
it's not
Not very
very
expensive.
expensive. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So multi-factor authentication, I think there's 5 areas that we like to tackle when we first kind of set off with a business on their journey and their roadmap to becoming a safer, stronger environment. Multi-factor authentication is an absolute must. It's easy, but it's like the most critical step that you can do. I think the stat is 99% of password-based attacks can be blocked by MFA, and we can go into a story of where the 1%, we can go into that story. But yeah, multi-factor authentication.
John,
Go on.
just very briefly say what MFA is, because
Yep.
we use MFA throughout everything, but it's just for those, as you say, there's a lot of companies out there that don't use it, and
Yeah, no, of course.
perhaps just
So
a quick explanation of it would be helpful.
So it's two-factor, multi-factor, but mainly two-factor. So you've got the first factor, which is your password. So you type your password in, and the second factor is something that you own. So something that you have, which would be, say, a device, whether it's a mobile phone or whether it's a tablet, or whether it's it's just whether that's a text message or a notification that comes through to your phone. So that would be the second factor. So the first factor, you type your password in. Second factor, you get an alert on your mobile phone to say this user from this location is trying to log in at this time. Is this you? And you can either approve or deny. That's the kind of the push notification. But you could also have a code, which is smarter, I think, and it's a lot safer than the push for reasons that we can go into when I go through the 1%.
Yeah.
But yeah, the code is obviously something that you receive and you have to manually type in instead of just maybe accidentally pushing approve when it isn't yourself.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the first of your 5 then, George. What are
Yes,
the other
first of
4
five.
then?
So the second one, it links in nicely, but it's a strong password. So again, it seems really simple, but Microsoft have done a lot of work on resolving this, but there's still cases where it isn't resolved. But Microsoft now, if you have a Microsoft 365 account, so you're online and you're in the cloud, they have this as a baseline. So it's 8 characters, and then you have the ability to turn on MFA, and you can avoid simple passwords like password 123. However, if you are on-prem, so you have a physical server with Active Directory, etc., these are password policies that you have to set yourself. So you have to go in and it's called a group policy, and you have to make a group policy, and you have to say it has to be a certain amount of characters long, not simple passwords. It needs to be reset every 30 days. You can only attempt maybe 3 times before it locks you out, etc. So there will be some, and I know they're out there. There will be some infrastructures out there that aren't on the cloud and they're still on-prem without MFA and with a password that is basically either their name or just password. So yeah, again, super simple, doesn't cost you anything. And it's the same with Microsoft with the MFA. It's another free tool that is there with the right licensing. It's there for you to use whenever you please. The third thing
Sorry,
is
George,
go on,
just
sorry.
quickly on the passwords. I mean, I heard some staggering statistic that actually the time taken to break a password
Mm.
is measured in milliseconds, unless you start complying with some of the Microsoft requirements for
Yeah.
8 characters with special characters. I mean, it's not something that you've got somebody plugging away at somebody like you or me just pushing buttons and trying it out. These
Yeah,
things
just
are
giving it a go.
systematically tried to be broken
Well,
by
and
computers.
and you've got AI now as well. Just throw
Yeah.
that in the mix as well, and it just makes everything a lot more easier for the attackers. So I mean, you don't even have to have any sort of qualifications anymore. You can effectively, I think it's I don't want to mispronounce it, but obviously got ChatGPT, but I believe there's a tool, it's called Worm GPT, which is effectively the dark side of ChatGPT.
Oh dear me.
And effectively can just create whatever script, whatever crypto, ransomware, whatever you want to do, spam email. It can create anything for you. So the average Joe now is able to create these types of attacks, which is even more worrying.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the second one. Go on, we're
Second
getting
one.
there. We're slowly through. Number
Working my way
three.
through them. Number three is again something that's free that you don't need any tools for is keeping your software up to date. So a lot of your Windows, Microsoft software, you can do through your settings. So you can set that automatically through each machine. Or if you are using cloud and you're using a mobile device management solution, I say mobile includes laptops as well, obviously. If you're using an MDM solution like Intune, then you can set that from a base tenant level and it pushes out to all of your machines. And again, it's something, if you're on-prem and you're not online, it's another group policy that you can set as well. The other option or the other side of that is obviously if you have software that isn't Microsoft related, so say Sage or Google Chrome or any other software, think of any other software, you can, there's always options within that software to select automatic updates and not manually trigger the updates yourself. If they don't have that, find a new software because it's not right for you. But yeah, that's the fourth one. Again, I haven't said anything that costs any money yet. So
No, yeah, that's right. That's right.
The next one probably will, and the next two probably will, but minimal, and it depends how in depth you go with it. But backups, you can have kind of all the best security in place if you like. If you're not prepared for the worst scenario, the worst case scenario of an attack that happens that encrypts all of your files and you can't get them back, etc., and you don't have a backup, then you've got real problems. We've had it with multiple customers, luckily not ourselves, but multiple customers that.
Presumably before they were customers, or were they actually customers, George?
But a bit of both, a bit of both, really. Okay. Yeah, a bit of both. Some at the early stages and some before they were customers. Yeah, you do get obviously a lot of phone calls when the worst has already happened, which is unfortunate because
it's a bit late, isn't it?
It shouldn't be then. It should have been way before that. But so backups are a huge thing. One thing, and as something that we've seen in real life is, or just a scenario that we've seen, backups have to be separate. And I don't think some people think about that in terms of the network segregation. So if you've got servers on your network and you've also got a backup system on your network and your network gets breached, compromised, then obviously they'll encrypt all of your files on your servers, but they'll also encrypt your backups. So you've got nothing again. So the backups must be off-site, completely separate to the network. I mean, back in the day, I mean, I'm not old, but I say back in the day. But back when I first started as an apprentice about 15 years ago, I used to have to walk a tape. So we used to put tapes into a backup system that would back everything up, and then I used to walk the tape from one end of the what do you call it? It was an industrial park, if you like. I used to walk it from one end to the other, cross a little river, cross a road into a safe storage place, and we used to store it there overnight. Whereas obviously now with backups, you have data centers, you can network segregate, and it's all virtual and all within data centers. So it's much easier now. You don't have to do the physical, actually getting your steps in and walking across.
Okay.
So yeah, there's different ways to do it, but now, like I said, it's when you go with things like Veeam, there's Rubrik backup as well. They're all online. They do cost money. There is Microsoft has its cloud backup as well, and that will be obviously based on licensing the amount of gig that you get. But that's something to look into as well. It's probably the cheaper option, to be honest. And then the fifth and final one, and it's the most important one, is train your staff, because you could have everything in place, but if your staff aren't aware of the consequences and what it means when certain things happen and the certain decisions that they make, then it can it can wipe out everything, all the good work that you've done. I think the stat is it's 98%, and please don't fact check me, anyone, but I think it's 98% of breaches or compromises come from human error. So that's quite a lofty percentage.
Operator error. Yes, well,
Yeah.
that's often my problem with IT in general. It's generally me rather than the system that's at fault.
User error, I think
Absolutely,
is the slang in the IT game.
absolutely. I mean, that's a great. There's 5 areas, you say, three nil cost, 2 marginal cost to secure systems. It's a great system. It's some great advice there, George. We've all got, if we're all running Microsoft systems, we now have Microsoft Defender that seems to get everywhere. Can we rely on Microsoft Defender to any extent, or is that just still a fairly basic package?
Yeah, so if you'd asked me that question a few years ago, I'd have said absolutely not. Go and find something independent. So we use Sophos,
Yeah.
which is a good solution. However, Microsoft have chucked in a Microsoft way, have chucked a load of money at it, and now they're one of the top players now in the security world, if you like, and their Microsoft Defender that you see is obviously the inbuilt Defender antivirus that you get on your machine. They have brought out an EDR solution, as endpoint detection and response, and I guess the way to explain both of them is your basic inbuilt Defender that you have is antivirus, so it will have signatures that are within its database, and if one of them signatures pops up, it will say that's malware, that's a virus, block it. And it's kind of basic, if you like, simple. Whereas the endpoint detection and response will look at behaviors, look at things that could happen. So they say 0-day risks, things that could happen before, say, your antivirus signature database is updated with it. So yeah, Defender for Business. If you've got Microsoft Business Premium, then within that you have Defender for Business, which has the endpoint detection and response in it, which is as good as any, in my opinion, as good as any antivirus out there, really.
Okay.
So yeah, you will have some environments where they just have the basic inbuilt Defender. I personally don't think with the technology nowadays that's good enough. I think it should at least be at EDR. And then you've got XDR, which is extended detection and response, which does a lot more fancy things. And then you've got MDR, which is managed detection and response, which is actually waiting for incidents to happen and managing the incident, containing it, kicking them out. There's loads of different ways, but for me, I think if you can get onto EDR, then that's probably, I would say, the baseline at the moment. And Microsoft Defender for Business licenses, if you just want an add-on, it's £3 per user per month. If you have Microsoft Business Premium, it's around £21 per user per month. So if you don't want to take that jump from business basic or standard to premium, but you do want that extra protection, the Defender for Business is a good option.
It's a place to be. Brilliant. So if you've done all these things, and as a manager and owner of a business, or do we then get ourselves accredited, or how do we tell our suppliers and our customers how wonderful we are? Because if we just turn around and say, well, of course, I've got multi-factor authentication, nobody can touch me now.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily sure I believe them.
Yeah, no, yeah, it doesn't quite work like that, does it? Though.
No.
So, and I think these are the conversations that I like to have with business owners, because I like to speak their language, if you like, and it's not just let's do this for the right reasons and securing your systems and being safe, but there is also the commercial benefit that comes with it, like you've just said, of your vendors and your suppliers and people that you're trying to, say, tender for projects or win projects on. There is becoming more and more of a baseline of supplier agreements where it's like, here's a questionnaire, supplier questionnaire, sorry, where, okay, then you want to take on this multi-million-pound contract. Here's a questionnaire, please fill that out. And it will have things on there like, do you do user awareness training? Do you have multi-factor authentication, etc., etc.? But one of the key sticklers now is at the bottom. It would say, do you have Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus? Especially if you're working for in like a public sector or government or enterprise contracts. I think a lot of companies will be at the kind of low end where you don't need that, but they're looking for their next, say, push commercially and the next revenue earner and the next big thing. And my advice would obviously first point is do it to secure your systems. But if you're looking for that next kind of revenue stream, getting one of these certifications, whether it's Cyber Essentials or it's ISO 27001, will put you at the top of the list because everyone's starting to do it now. And we even have it ourselves as well. When we take on IT support contracts now with new customers, they will be asking for us to have these things, and they should. And we have ISO 9001, 27001, and we have Cyber Essentials Plus. So in terms of Cyber Essentials, it's a government-backed certification. It their statement, IASME or the governing body, their statement is 80%. It stops over 80% of common cyber attacks. And there's two levels to it. So there's Cyber Essentials Basic, which is a self-assessment, which is 80 questions that you just fill out in a form online. That gets sent off to an assessor. So Toragaurd are a Cyber Essentials Basic and Plus assessors. I've got a team of assessors that will mark these, either coming in from the central pool, which is online, just random customers, or customers that come to us direct to fill out as well. So the self-assessment is just a form you fill out. The Plus kind of takes it one step further, where it will look at the self-assessment and it will say, right, you said that you patch all of your security updates within 14 days. Let's run a vulnerability scan on your whole network and see if any vulnerabilities pop up that are older than 14 days. And they normally do, because obviously people with a self-assessment, they fill it out with the best intentions. But obviously sometimes it's difficult to keep on top of everything. I'll give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Same with multi-factor authentication, right? On the self-assessment, you said that you have multi-factor authentication for all your cloud services. Well, let's open up Microsoft and see if it prompts you for MFA when you log in. And again,
It doesn't. It might not.
Sometimes. So that's Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. I'm happy to go through ISO.
Yeah, just sort of say what the ISO. I mean, just as a high level, what's the difference between the Cyber Essentials, which is clearly the 80 questions and then validated or not, and what's the difference between that then and the British standard? So if somebody's, because that would normally be audited by somebody as well, if it's going to be accredited to that standard.
Yeah. So do you mean the difference between Cyber Essentials and ISO? Do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So ISO is probably the big brother, I guess, in the scenario. It's more internationally recognized. Cyber Essentials is just a UK backed scheme at the moment, and I think it was something crazy. I think we spoke about it previously before the podcast. I think it's around 12% of UK businesses know about Cyber Essentials. Again, please no one fact check me, but that was the stat that I saw. So yeah, Cyber Essentials is UK. If you went and tried to win work internationally, the chances of that supplier or that vendor knowing about Cyber Essentials, we've had it before with a customer coming to us and they've gone, right, well, we're trying to win work in America. They're asking for ISO 27001, but we've told them that we've got Cyber Essentials Plus, and they've come back and said that they don't care. So
why would they?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So ISO is very, very much internationally recognized. It's much larger, but it also does take up a lot of your time. If you're a UK-based customer, organization, that a lot of your work is done in the UK, I would recommend going for Cyber Essentials, because you're looking at a couple of weeks to pass it, depending on how willing you are to kind of fix the remediation work that comes off the back of, say, finding out where you are initially in a gap analysis. And then Cyber Essentials Plus will probably take you around 2 to 3 months, whereas ISO can take a lot longer. And myself and one of our other directors, who looks after 9001, we spend a lot of our time internally making sure everything is still running smoothly. So Cyber Essentials is here's the technical requirements, turn up for the audit day, see if you pass, and then when it comes back round to recertifying next year, obviously give yourself a few months beforehand to check if any requirements have changed, but just make sure you're on top of it. ISO is slightly different, where yeah, you have an audit every year, but they also want to see continual improvement is the phrase that they like to use, and that will be you have to do internal audits. So we do an internal audit every quarter to check internally that we're still complying with it. It's if you find anything that you think is out of the ordinary or something that doesn't fit the requirements, you then have to write that down and come up with a plan of how you're going to fix it. And this is all things that the auditor externally will want to see on that audit day. And the audit takes 3 days and it costs a lot more money. So I think if you're a lot more mature and you're, say, internationally recognized, ISO is probably the way to go. If you're a small to medium-sized business, Cyber Essentials is definitely a much easier option for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we've touched on it, George, previously, but I think, do you want to just say how exposed working with a supply chain might be? I mean, you talked about putting worms and think, well, exposing, if you give access to somebody to your system, could you just sort of very briefly say, that's the same as somebody coming in, isn't it? Through, it's the same as a fraudster getting direct access but this time probably, under the guise of somebody you trust, and that trust is something that's often quite misplaced, isn't it?
Yeah, and I can give you an actual scenario that's happened
That'd be helpful,
to explain it a little bit more. And this one's even more scary because they technically never, that the attackers never had access or never breached into this organization. However, one of their suppliers that they use, that they send a certain sum of money, they get an invoice every month for, I think it's every month or it's annually. I think it's annually, sorry, and it's for around 150 grand. So it turns out that supplier was actually compromised. Someone had got into the accounts inbox for that supplier of theirs, and was sitting there looking at emails going back and forth for 2 to 3 months, I believe, is what the investigation, because we also do digital forensics investigations. So that's what the investigation found, that they were actually in there for a few months, looking at invoices going back and forth. So what the attacker actually did was see that this supplier sends your organization an invoice every year for 150 grand, at whatever date it was. And then what they did is they spoofed the domain of the supplier, um, and then started sending emails over pretending to be the supplier, saying our invoice details have changed with obviously the logo and everything, etc., etc. And because they didn't have the right processes in place at the organization, because at the end of the day, if an invoice, if a supplier invoice has changed, or the money's changed, or the bank accounts have changed, the first thing you should be doing is ringing the office and saying, just confirming that we've had this email and it's come through and it said XYZ. They didn't do that. They sent the money off, and they lost 150 grand. So these are the types of things. They're not even in your system, but because the suppliers that you work with, you're not doing your due diligence on where they are with their security maturity, it's now affected you.
Yeah, I think I'm aware of another one very similar to that, where the supplier had voice over IP on their phone systems, and the fraudster could make a phone call purporting to come from that supplier, directing them, because they've been directing to the main contractor.
Yeah.
And because they've been monitoring phone calls and emails for so long, they knew who everybody was.
Yeah.
And it's what they probably called a slam dunk in terms of fraudsters speak. But again, they managed to convince everybody because the phones and the emails were coming direct from that company.
Yep.
So you can't be too careful.
You cannot, no.
So that's one scare story. Are there any other scare stories you'd like to sort of flag up as sort of examples of why it's important to address the issue?
Yeah, I think the next one would probably be around your users and making sure that they're aware. I won't go into too many details of exactly what happened, but
names, whatever, please.
No, of course not, no. But this one was we did a project to enroll multi-factor authentication onto a company. We did that. They then had MFA when they had the push notifications that come through. And this goes back to what I was saying previously with, if your users aren't aware, you can have everything in place. You can do all of the right things and you can put multi-factor authentication in place. But if your users don't understand what it means in certain scenarios and what the pitfalls and the outcomes are, if they do certain actions within that, then there is a point still, but there's almost no point kind of going through all of this, because in this scenario, the person wasn't aware of what them issues that could lie off the end of it, but they then started receiving notifications late at night. I believe while they were trying to sleep, they started receiving these notifications. Denying, go away. I don't want to know about it. Go away. And in the end, they were getting one through every second, I believe. And in the end, after just sitting there denying it, they got so fed up with it that they wanted it to go away. So they just pressed approve, so it would go away. And in the end, financially, they lost money out of it. Kind of in the same instance of being able to access certain inboxes after the fact that they got in, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it's one of the most important things that your users are aware. If you do anything, it is to make sure that everyone's on edge and everyone's aware that to not be caught out, I believe. Yeah.
I mean, user training is fundamental to all sorts of things that we do. Is there any, have you got any advice for the sort of user training that can be done? I mean, you talked about penetration testing at the beginning of the interview.
Yeah.
So, could you give some advice on user training and how that might work?
Yeah. So the user training that we offer, and I think the majority of consultancies would offer, and you don't have to go to consultancy for this. You can reach out direct to. There's some really good ones out there if you do some good research. But the way that we run it is in kind of 3 or 4 stages. The first stage is to do an initial assessment, which is around 20 questions, and you do get some pushback sometimes from some owners that are like, this is going to completely disrupt operations, and we're like, okay, fine. But it is really good to do the assessment. You get everyone in your organization. We've all done it at Toragaurd. You get everyone to do the test, if you like, the assessment. It then it scores them out of 100% individually. It then gives you an overall percentage of your organization. It then even tells you what your industry average percentage is. So obviously we're in the IT cyber industry, so it's a lot higher than others. I think ours is around 75 to 80% as an average. Luckily, we obviously score higher than that. So that's the initial assessment. And it also will give you categories of what areas that they've failed in, whether that's kind of mobile security, network, internet security, email security, like, because these questions are all around certain subjects, if you like. So you can then target the training how you want after that. So after the assessment, would then target the training on industry or only on certain people. So a lot of the time, they're quite content if someone's scoring over the industry standard, which I don't necessarily agree with, but if they're scoring over the industry standard, look at the people that are scoring under and give them the support that they need, which I think is important, but also I think everyone should be doing it. Once the training's done, the initial training's done, you then can send out the phishing simulation. That's when it gets fun. You send out the phishing simulations, which are basically fake malicious emails, which are trying to get you to open attachments, trying to get you to click on links, trying to get you to give us your password. And I think that is probably, without realizing, it's probably one of the most effective things, because everyone is so on edge. And we have it at my business now. It's when I'll get random Teams messages or emails saying, "Oh yeah, nice try to catch me there," and I'm like, I don't know what you mean, because I'm obviously not sitting there and like, right, today I'm going to target Mark and I'm going to send him this email and hope he clicks on it. It's all AI driven, automatic. But a lot of the time, it is a legitimate malicious email. It is an actual attacker sending an email that's got through the spam filter, and they're messaging me saying, "Oh yeah, nice try. I saw that one coming a mile off." But that's what I mean by it's almost one of the most important things to do is the phishing simulation, because it puts everyone on edge. No one wants to be caught. No one wants to be the one that gets caught, gives their password, because it's all reported at the end. So your
Yeah, yeah.
decision makers and your business owners will get a report to say these people on these dates clicked on these emails and they gave us their password or they opened this attachment, etc., etc. So the reporting is the final side of the user awareness training.
Hmm. And very effective it is too, because having been on the end of it, I've been very careful that the last person I need is my name, failing the user training.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose it comes on to just one of the other things which I've been personally made aware of is the ability to scrape information off the internet to simulate both a voice but also an image, in
Mm.
terms of trying to get things done. And we're aware of a very large consultancy that lost many millions of pounds in Hong Kong because their chief exec was on Teams on a completely fabricated program, and they lost many millions of pounds to a fraudster. Is that something we're seeing more of? Is people sort of fake voices or images
Yeah,
of people?
yeah, and it's a lot of it's, in my opinion, is driven by AI as well. So we've had that with us. It's something that we decided to not use in the end, but you can get AI images, voiceovers of yourself
Mm,
talking. It was a potential sales thing that we looked at, but we decided that it's not personable enough
yeah,
to use. But yeah, it's definitely something that, like I said earlier, you don't have to be a genius to make these things work anymore, because you can just use an AI tool. Um, that will be able to scrape images. I went to a talk, I went to an event, it was an InfoSec event up London, late last year or maybe during the summer last year, and there was a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he literally, his whole talk was on this, and his whole talk was showing us um, videos of, say, Donald Trump, videos of other kind of influential people speaking and actually moving around and saying awful things, and you almost had to guess whether it was them or it wasn't them. And a lot
yeah.
of the time, everyone was getting it wrong, and they were thinking that's definitely Donald Trump, and then it wasn't. It was actually just an
Uh,
AI generated version of him.
it's frightening because it means the systems we have to have in place to manage that
Yeah,
it's another level up again, isn't it? That's
yeah.
that's that's the challenge.
And this guy was obviously an expert, and
Yeah.
his whole point was that he can see it because he's studied and he specializes in that area, which is a really cool thing to specialize in. Um, Not quite my expertise, because I didn't do very well at
Okay.
the old guess game, but because they're all so real, they're all,
Yeah.
and then you start doubting yourself, and then you start saying no, that's not real, and it was real, and you're like, ah. So yeah, I don't know the answer to fixing it. Um, yeah, like you said, maybe there are going to be inbuilt tools that are built into machines that will be able to detect this stuff for you, because he does run a course, and I'm annoyed that I don't remember his name, but he does run a course to help you kind of decipher the key attributes to say whether it is, say, scraped and generated, or whether it is legit. But it's worth looking into if you're interested into it. It's quite fun.
Yeah. I mean, I've just told my staff that if I phone up and ask them to do something that's out of the ordinary, to
Mm.
ask me a question that only they know the answer to, so that
Yeah, well,
you've got a better chance of identifying if it's me or not.
yeah, and I think that's where it's all kind of evolved from. I mean, the old school one, and I'm going back maybe 8 or 10 years now, is when I um, worked at a previous company. They there was an incident where it was a text message instead, and we've had some previously, but not actually been caught. But instead of, say, voice scraping and send and then ringing, it was just a WhatsApp. It started off with an email saying, "Hi, this is Mark, the chairman. I need you to do an urgent task for me. Please give me your phone number because I need to ring you now, or need to message you now." So then the person then emails back their phone number, they then WhatsApp them and say, I need you to go down the store or supermarket and buy £2,000 worth of iTunes vouchers or whatever
Yeah.
vouchers it is. And they go down there, they send them to them, they redeem them straight away, and they've lost that money straight away. So
Yeah.
that's obviously the old school way, and now everyone's getting clever with the voice scraping. But yeah, either way, we still see. I saw that one last year. Someone sending an email pretending to be RMD, and saying, "Can you give me your number? I need to have an urgent request for you to do." It's a
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a very loaded question now, George, and
Good.
wary of who you are. But we know, yeah, so started off by saying that cyber advisors were, perhaps quite an unknown quantity to many people in the industry. How do you identify a good consultant versus a cheap consultant?
Yeah, I knew this one was coming.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
So
it's because it's something we those of us in the industry are very good at supply chain. We
yep,
generally know what we want, and we can work out the questions we need to ask
yep,
to identify the sheep from the goats.
yep.
And on the basis that we need to get a quality service rather than the cheap service, how would you
Mhm.
go about? What advice do you have for people looking to procure that, other than just pick up the phone to you?
Yeah, well, obviously the first option is to pick the phone up to me, and then the second option is to look at how they're accredited and the accreditations that they've got.
Okay.
Um, so if they are, if you wanted help with ISO 27001, you need to find, in my opinion, a company that has the right credentials. So they have members of staff, they have consultants that have ISO 27001 lead implementer certification or lead auditor certification. Again, with the cyber essentials, you get a lot, and I've seen them. You get a lot of people saying that they're cyber essentials consultants, but they don't have the credentials. So how on earth have they kind of found I realize the requirements are out there, but as assessors, we have a 50-page document that has all of the requirements. It has it all broken down. It has every mishap, everything that you should have, what you shouldn't have, and how you should deal with them situations. And again, looking for someone that's a certification body in cyber essentials is another option. So you've got IASME, obviously you've got the government, the NCSC, and then you've got IASME, the governing body, and then Toragaurd and other companies. There's quite a lot of us that are certification bodies, and it's really important to find one of them if you need advice. That's probably the most obvious answer is to go with that. One thing that's going to sound ridiculous, but I believe in it, is also their day rate. And I know that sounds silly, but if you're the average day rate, I'd say and obviously this all depends on geographical location, but if you're kind of in the location of where we are, or you're London, and you're hitting the realms of say £1,000 a day to £2,000 a day, you've got yourself a well-established, and they've got their accreditations. You've got yourself a well-established, good cybersecurity consultancy firm. If you're finding some that are 600, 700, I would start questioning credentials and how they can do it that cheap is, yeah, it boggles me because, again, with penetration testing, what standards do they follow? Because you've got Crest, and Crest has a certain methodology that it follows and a certain routine that it follows. And again, we've got a guy in our team that did the Crest certification, and it's not easy. It's extremely hard. It took him a long time to get through it, but now he's got it, and we see the benefits, and we can put that badge on there. It's great. And then if you're in the public sector, if you want penetration testing, you need to be looking for someone that is check team leader, so they can work in the public sector. You shouldn't be going for someone that doesn't have any sort of certification for penetration, especially penetration testing. It needs to be ethical. It needs to be methodical. So yeah, I guess the short answer is check what type of badges they have, and if you're not sure, give me a call and I'll help you.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, a lot. I'm very well. We've had a great canter through what is a really important topic. Given this is going to construction and energy sectors, are there anything, any sort of parting words of wisdom that you might like to urge them to do to make themselves, well, effectively to be around in 10 years' time, I suspect. But it is,
Yeah,
to mitigate the cyber risks that are out there.
yeah, and I think I'll reel off the points, but
Go on then, you reel off the
it
points.
it's a multi-factor authentication, keeping your software up to date, securing your supply chain, which is obviously a big one that we spoke about,
Yeah.
training your staff, and then protecting your critical data with your backups and encryption and network segregation. And then also, just in case the worst does happen, have an incident response plan to hand that all of your staff know that if they see something suspicious or the worst has happened, they know exactly where to report it so you can get to it as quickly as possible.
I think that last point's really important, isn't it? Because speed
Yep,
speed is everything at that point.
yep,
Otherwise you can lose everything
yep.
and it's really important. George, it's been really helpful. It's been I think some great lessons there. Your 5 points to keep us all safe and to make sure that we've got systems which are relatively resilient and robust is really pertinent.
Yep.
But thank you very much for your time today, and wish you every success in keeping industry safe and secure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.